Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. My name's William and this is iRacing. Today we're going to be driving the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 around Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, or MoSport, which is a lot easier to say in my opinion, so going to stick with that. This is for the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge Series and iRacing official series, so it's going to MoSport this week for a 30-minute race, back to normal for this week. I'm going to have a hot lap for you, a bit of a track guide. I'm not the greatest around this track, so take that for a grain of salt. But also share the setup that I'm running with this for the week. So tons of fun on this track. Very, very, very challenging. It can be very frustrating. This track, in my opinion. So if you're struggling with it, it's just kind of the nature of the beast really around here. A lot of people are going to struggle with this track, I'm sure. But it is a ton of fun and extremely fun in these GT4s. So I'm going to go ahead and get onto the hot lap, and I'll be back to talk to you guys around the lap and then also share my setup with you at the end there. So enjoy. All right, everyone, so that was the hot lap around the track. Now I'm going to go through a little bit slowly. You can see my inputs down in the bottom left of the screen, and I'll kind of try and talk my way around this lap as well as we go through it. So we're going to be starting our lap here. Just for note, while we're here, you really want to watch this exit curb. It is very inviting, and did it a couple times in practice before making this video. Two tires means that you kind of meet these Castrol advertisements off to the right. So just watch your corner exit there. But as we come up, we start our lap. Turn one is completely blind. As you can see, you can't really see it, and there's no real good reference points going into turn one. So I actually use this pole on the left and kind of the shadow that the power lines leave over the track as my marker. It's not the greatest in the world, but you'll notice around this track there's not a lot of references that you can really pick up. So we're gonna go into this quarter, braking just after those, and it's the tiniest amount of brake, and then already back on the throttle. So just clipping that curb, you can definitely hook the inside of this curb. It is actually quite tall, and if you get your right side tires on the inside of it, you can hook it and go around, but it does slightly unsettle the car. So maybe later in the race when your tires are really hot, and kind of the car gets a little slidey like it does, that might be a really bad move. So this is kind of a conservative line through turn one, but just clipping the curb at the end there, and already full throttle as you can see. And once again with this curb, same thing as the final corner. Just be really careful with the exit. You can run wide, but if it seems like if you have any wheel in the car at all, you're going to go straight off to the right and meet this very hard concrete barrier. And with the damage model the way it is, you kind of expect to see some people do that in your races. And if you don't, You know, if they're ahead of you, those are freebies anyway. So we come into the next corner. Once again, this is blind completely. So poles and hills and stuff like that are kind of my reference points. So this kind of mound and the pole over to the left side, if for some reason you're on that side of the track, if you're defending or something, is my reference. So the start of the hill there on the right, and just the smallest amount of brake, just dragging the brake and really getting as close as possible to this grass. You do not want to hit this though. This is quite a big lip, and it will shoot you straight off to the right. So just getting as close as I can to it, still dragging the brake, kind of running out into the middle of the track before we arc all the way back in, and kind of doing this like a double apex corner. So arcing all the way back in and then looking for full power, as you can see, and tracking out to the exit curb here. You don't quite need to use all of it if you don't need to, because you need to go ahead and get back over to the left-hand side of the track to set up for this right-hander. This corner is probably the second easiest corner for me to mess up on this track, and it is partially because there's it's really deceiving on when you can get back into the throttle, in my opinion anyway. So for this next corner, my reference is actually this big advertisement on the left-hand side here. So as we get next to that advertisement, I'm already on the brakes, and pretty hard, about 50% brake as we turn into this corner, and then just trailing it off as we get closer to the apex. And I'm just a little bit off of it, but I don't want to jump this curb, and already picking the throttle back up. I was actually a little conservative into this corner. I probably could have broke just a touch later or gotten back on the gas a little bit earlier and got a little slide, had to correct. But we're going to track out all the way to this rumble strip here, and go ahead and swing the car back across to the right hand side of the track, because once again we have another blind corner kind of falling off the face of the earth after this Continental Tire advertisement bridge here. So as we get up here, this I have zero reference for. I really cannot help you out other than show you kind of in slow motion. This is all by feel. So just before the Continental Tire, I go ahead and turn in and aim. I guess that's really the best thing I can say is you can kind of turn in and you'll see this little bit of extra um, tarmac show up on the left. So that right there is kind of what you're aiming for, this curb, but you do not want to hit this or this curb right here. And we're just playing with the throttle to keep the car from shooting out to the right. I really want to keep my line as tight to the left as I can through this entire part, because this corner is a monstrosity and extremely easy to screw up. And if you do, you're going into the tire barriers. There's no runoff around this track, which is one of the reasons I like it so much. It's extremely challenging. I'm not that great at it, like I said, but it is a ton of fun to drive. So um, keeping it nice and tight here, but this curb is massive, and if you hit it, you're probably going to get shot off to the right, and it's really going to compromise this corner, this following corner, and everything like that. So as we go through here, like you see, we're basically painting this white line with our left front tire, which is exactly what I want to do, and just playing with the throttle to keep the car from washing wide. Now then, coming over back to the left as I'm kind of on the brakes, and you can see how aggressively on the brakes I am. And there's not really a great point for the brakes on this one either. This Acura sign over here, but that's way off to the right. It's not really where you want to be looking. So I kind of use this black patch in the track as I go over it, and then it's like a moment of full throttle, car straightens, and hard on the brakes. If you want a better reference, it's probably this pole over on the left. And then I think also from the, we can take a look from the car view. You can kind of see, well, you can't because it's the ultra wide monitor, but nevertheless, it's basically the second the car gets straight, you're hard onto the brakes. This Acura advertisement here is about to go behind the pillar. So like I said, this track is very, very difficult with your references, but nevertheless, we are hard onto the brakes, probably about 80% brake there. and then trailing it off as I turn in, really close to the curb, not wanting to hit this curb in the first part because you do not want the car to get thrown further to the left at all. So we're just trailing the brake now and keeping the nose loaded up as we're aiming for this little bit of rumble strip here. There's no runoff behind this rumble strip, so if you go slightly wide, the car is basically going straight into that concrete barrier. So nice and soft, a lot of steering angle in the car. And once you get about here, the car will rotate. Should anyways, if you got it slowed down enough and you didn't run off wide, the car will rotate aggressively into this second part of the corner. And basically, the second it does, you get on the gas and you help it rotate. So I was actually a little late through this corner. Um, I should have gotten the car rotated just about maybe like a car length earlier, maybe a little less, and I could have really kind of shot into this apex and not hit this curb, but been a lot closer to it. You can see how far off the curb I wind up being. Even though we're back in the throttle, the car rotates a little bit more from the rear end, and I'm still a good width off of it. That's just lost time on throttle really by me, so a little bit slower lap time because of it. But we're now just going to aim for this rumble strip on the left-hand side. I don't want to go out beyond it. It's quite bumpy, so just aiming for that left rumble strip, and we're going to just kind of paint it around, then aim for the right side of the track, taking the shortest line possible. And the next corner is a right-hand turn, so if you're wanting to defend, most likely you're going to want to be on the right-hand side of the track. It can be done because it's a switchback. It goes right and then left. You can definitely have a passing opportunity if you can make it stick on the left, but someone that is quite aggressive will probably just push you off wide, and it can be kind of difficult to hang out on the outside of the track. It can be done though. I've definitely seen it happen. So as you come over this crest is when you need to start looking. Now you can actually see the next corner. This next series of corners comes up really fast, and we're going to be once again using these telephone poles because don't really have a great marker. So it's 3 telephone poles basically before the turn in. Like I said, fantastic markers around this track. So I'm braking before it, but it's about halfway in between the 4th and the 3rd telephone pole. Braking, quite aggressive initial brake, and then trailing it all the way down. Um, as close to this white line as you can possibly get the car is where you want it, and then back on the throttle. So this one you kind of just play with how you take the throttle. You want to carry speed through this one because this next corner you want to carry speed but stay on the right hand side because this next corner is a left-hander, and then you're going back to the right once again. So you kind of compromise these first two to get a good run through the final corner, which leads you onto the straightaway. So we're going to stay about in the middle of the track and then go ahead and turn in a little bit more brake, just a touch. You really don't need a lot of brake at this point. Get the car turned into this corner, hard onto the power once again. And you can see I'm not using any of this runoff over here, keeping the car basically on the like left-hand third of the track, and then coming back into the final corner. Now this I actually have a decent marker for. It's this S Sport logo on the wall. Basically, the second you're next to this Audi S for Sport logo is kind of whenever I'm on the brakes, and then just trailing it and hard back onto the throttle once again. You do not want to clip this curb either, as it is quite large. And like I said, whenever we started this, just really being careful and mindful of this exit um, curbing, as you can run off of it, and like I said, you'll wind up in those Castrol advertisements very, very quickly. But that put us basically good enough for a 23.5. I fully expect some people are going to go much faster than that, but not the greatest at this track, like I said, and it is always challenging. So just the more laps you put in, kind of the more time you find. I hope this can help you guys out anyways. Best of luck if you're doing these races this week. I'll have the setup on the page or coming up next, and then maybe just a couple things you can try and change if you don't like the balance it's giving you. But yeah, hope this helps, guys. All right, everybody. So we're going to take a look at the setup now for the Cayman around MoSport. So once again, starting pressures, like I said in the last video, lowest is what works right now. It doesn't necessarily make the most sense, but it is faster. You might get a better feel with a little bit more pressure in certain cars, but for speed, you want the lowest starting pressures you can get, and that's 20 psi. As you can see here, 20 psi all the way around. So on to the actual like nitty gritty of the setup. Um, let's see, a slightly stiffer front anti-roll bar really helped me. It does understeer a little bit until the front tires get a little bit heat in it, so expect the first couple laps to feel a little bit understeery, and then the front gets a little bit more, a little bit pointier, which I really liked. And this brake bias as well. So 46.7. After you get a couple laps in it, I kind of start working my brake bias back just a little bit. It goes in increments of 0.25. So for every click back you make, so it's at 46.75 right now. It goes to 46.5, 46.25, so on and so forth. I don't really ever go below 3 clicks back. So 46% in the race is kind of, or in a longer run anyways, is about what I would be running. And ABS TC ESC setting on 6. The higher the number, the more aid you have. The lower the number, the less aid you have from the traction control and the ABS. So and the stability control as well, because that's on there. Um, I prefer it around 6 or 7 typically. Your mileage may vary with different settings. I know some people that just turn the TC and the stability control off via the button mapping that you can do. So it's really up to you on that one. For this stuff, we'll go ahead and look at our ride heights in millimeters, 'cause that's what makes more sense to me, and toe. Um, so quite a bit of toe in, or negative toe on the front of the car, 2.4 millimeters, just trying to help the car turn in. Sometimes it's kind of the struggle. Um, Front ride height, almost near the limit on 101.5 millimeters, still a lot of clearance on the front of the car. And the bump stiffness, still, I believe I didn't actually change that from Silverstone, so 3. And then just a click of rebound. I was getting a lot of bouncing, especially through, I think it's Moss Corner. It is a little bit better now with a little bit of rebound. I didn't really need it for the acceleration or the balance of the car or anything, just a little bit to kind of help steady the car over the curbs. Um, let's see. The rear, so this is different. The spring rate increase on the rear just really helped in the high-speed corners, the feel I got from the car, and also the rear ride height as well. We're running that a little bit low. That way, whenever the tire pressures come up, the rear tire pressures come up quite a bit more than the front, and we want to keep um, the center of gravity and everything as low as we can, but also kind of try and keep a balance for whenever those tires do come up to pressure and kind of raise the car up a little bit. The bump stiffness on the rear, so this is probably pretty aggressive, running it quite low. If you're getting a lot of on throttle oversteer or anything like that, you can just increase that bump stiffness just a little bit, or you can increase this rear toe as well, because I'm pretty aggressive on that as well. I think it um, helps the car feel over a long run running a little amount of toe, but it can be a little bit sketchy. Um, let's see, for the fuel load, 41 liters for the 30-minute race, or 10.8 gallons should definitely be safe for a outlap and your race. Um, I think I think it's actually about 2 laps extra, or not quite 2 laps extra. It's like a lap and a half more than like best case scenario, like really fast laps. Um, so that should be about right. But if you need just a little bit more security, 11.4 should definitely get you to the end there. Wing still on 5, as that's just what's fast on this car. And then the rear anti-roll bar setting. So this I definitely think you can play with. You can stiffen this a little bit if you want a little bit more speed out of the car initially. It might skate around a little bit, but towards the end of the run, but everyone kind of is. So a little more aggressive would be increase the rear anti-roll bar It goes up to 7. You could definitely run it there if you want. And also, if you wanted to go more aggressive for the start of the race, you could also just decrease the front anti-roll bar by a click or so. Um, Anyways, guys, that is basically just the general overview of the setup. It's not super complicated in this car. Like I said, little tweaks here or there are kind of what it's all about, but it's mostly down to the driving, in my opinion. It's one of the reasons these things are so much fun. So I hope you enjoy. Best of luck to you this week if you're racing it, and until next time, bye-bye.